You won't believe this story. Imagine waking up one day to find out your neighborhood HOA, the same group that constantly nitpicks about your lawn, your mailbox, even the color of your shutters, just built a massive luxury resort. Not on their land. Not on public land. But on your lake. That's right. The lake you've owned for decades. The one your family has fished in, swum in, and built memories around. And when you confront them, they laugh in your face. But here's where it gets good. Instead of fighting them with petty fines or endless lawsuits, I did something no one saw coming. I sold the land beneath them. And not for thousands. Not for millions. But for billions. And the best part? They didn't see it coming until it was too late. This all started about 15 years ago. My grandfather left me a large piece of land in his will. It wasn't some tiny plot, it was hundreds of acres. Forests, rolling hills, and most importantly, a giant freshwater lake right in the center. Now, I didn't think much of it at first. I was busy with my career, starting a family, and honestly, I didn't want to sell it because it held sentimental value. That lake was where my grandfather taught me to fish. It was where we had family barbecues, bonfires, and even my first kiss. So, I just held on to it. Paid the taxes, kept it clean, and occasionally visited with my kids. Little did I know, that lake was about to become the center of a war. Fast forward a few years. A big property developer comes into town and builds a fancy neighborhood right near my land. You know the type, cookie-cutter mansions, gated entrances, and of course, an HOA to maintain community standards. At first, I didn't mind. They weren't on my land, and they had nothing to do with me. Or so I thought. But then, slowly, they started pushing boundaries. Literally. I'd visit my lake and notice things like boats tied to my dock that weren't mine, trash bins left near the shore, even picnic tables set up as if it was some kind of public park. I confronted one of the HOA board members about it, and do you know what she said? "Oh, don't be so uptight. Everyone here knows the lake is for community use." Excuse me? Community use? Lady, that lake is privately owned. By me. But that was just the beginning. 1 year later, I drive up to my lake and nearly crash my truck from what I see. Bulldozers. Cranes. Construction workers everywhere. And smack in the middle of my land, brand new foundations being poured. I stormed up to the site manager, demanding to know what was going on. He calmly tells me they're building a community resort. A luxury getaway spot for HOA residents and their guests. With a clubhouse, private pools, boat rentals, even a wedding venue overlooking MY water. I nearly lost it. Who authorized this? I yelled. And you know what he said? The HOA did. That's when I realized they had no clue who actually owned the lake. They just assumed it was part of their community property. But assumptions can cost you everything. Naturally, I lawyered up. My attorney sent them a cease and desist letter. Clear as day, the HOA had zero legal rights to build on my lake. Their response? They lawyered up too. And suddenly, I was dragged into a nightmare of court hearings, depositions, and legal jargon. The HOA argued that because their residents had been using the lake for years, it was essentially community property. They claimed historical usage rights. My lawyer laughed in their faces. We showed the deed, the tax records, everything proving I was the sole owner. But the HOA had deep pockets and kept dragging it out. Delays, motions, appeals, you name it. It was exhausting. And while the court battle dragged on, the resort kept getting bigger. Now, here's where things took a wild turn. While my lawyer and I were fighting the HOA, a completely different player entered the picture, a billionaire tech investor. He had been quietly buying up land across the state for a massive ecotourism project. And guess what property he was very interested in? My lake. One afternoon, I get a call from his rep. They don't just want the lake, they want all my land. Every acre. At first, I was hesitant. This was my family's land. My grandfather's legacy. But then the rep said something that changed everything. We're prepared to offer you just over $2.4 billion. Billion. With AB. I nearly dropped the phone. It wasn't an easy decision. Part of me wanted to hold onto the land out of spite, just to make the HOA suffer. But then I thought about it. Why should I keep fighting small-time bullies when I could change my family's future forever? So, I signed the deal. Within weeks, the paperwork was complete. The lake, the forest, every inch of the property, all transferred to the billionaire's company. And here's the kicker. The HOA? They didn't even know until the new owner's legal team served them eviction notices. The day it all came crashing down for them was glorious. Picture this. The HOA board holding one of their fancy meetings inside the newly finished resort clubhouse. Champagne glasses, catered food, bragging about their accomplishment. Then in walks a team of lawyers, flanked by security. Ladies and gentlemen, you are trespassing on private property. Effective immediately, this resort is closed. You have 72 hours to vacate. The looks on their faces? Priceless. They tried to fight it, of course. Claimed they had invested millions in the project. But none of that mattered. They built it on land they didn't own. And the new owner? He wasn't backing down. Within a month, the resort was demolished. The land was cleared for the eco project. And the HOA? Bankrupt. As for me, let's just say, my grandfather would be proud. I honored his legacy by protecting what was his, but I also gave my kids and grandkids a future beyond anything I could have imagined. I paid off every debt, set up trust funds, donated to charities my grandfather cared about. And every time I think back to those smug HOA board members laughing at me, I can't help but smile. Because while they thought they were building a resort, I was building generational wealth. So what's the lesson here? It's simple. Never underestimate the little guy. Because here's the truth. Power doesn't always wear a suit and tie or come with a fancy title on a shiny plaque. Sometimes, real power sits quietly in the background, waiting for the right moment to show itself. The people you look down on, the ones you mock, dismiss, or try to control, might be the very ones holding the keys to your future. Or in this case, the deed to the land beneath your feet. Think about it. This HOA thought they had it all figured out. They built their dream resort, bragged to their neighbors, and strutted around like they owned the world. They poured millions into a project they believed no one could take from them. But arrogance has a funny way of blinding people to reality. They never once stopped to ask, who actually owns this land? They just assumed. And that assumption cost them everything. So if you take anything from this story, let it be this. Always respect the people around you. Treat them fairly. Because you never know who you're really dealing with. The quiet neighbor down the street? He could be a lawyer, a judge, a billionaire investor, or the person who owns the very ground your house is built on. And as for HOAs, or anyone who thinks bullying and intimidation is the way to get what you want, remember this. Sometimes the biggest win doesn't come from fighting back louder. It comes from outsmarting your opponent in silence, waiting until the perfect moment to pull the rug out from under them. Because when the real owner shows up, you don't just lose your pride. You lose everything.